when you're intentionally crafting, because I mean, when you're putting the prompts in, it's like telling a story. It's painting a picture with words. And it is not easy because you have to understand how the AI interprets what you're saying and what it's going to output. Well, you're not using a quill pen and manually writing it on paper. You're using a typewriter. That's not art.
Whatever your opinions on Autotune are, it is still artistic. It's still an instrument. I mean, you still have somebody actually singing.
It's no different than like mastering something, like changing the volume and all the various.
And that's art too. That's totally art.
Well, welcome to yet another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments down there in the comments section. That'd be great.
And I am Casey Rochford, and we also write our own music. There will be a song at the end. Might be new, might be old, probably new. We still got stuff in the bin. But you should stick around to the end and check it out anyway. Not stick out, but stick around and check it out.
Or you can stick it out to the end.
Just stick it out and check around. Well, anyway, what should we check around and stick out with things?
Well, so lately, fairly recently, I actually set up my own AI art generation server at my house that's like completely basically off grid. So it's like I don't rely on someone else's website or their stuff. Like it runs within a computer in my house. And I've been messing around with it, and it's a lot of fun. But I also came across a video recently that was kind of criticizing AI art as not really being art. And it was like kind of the guy was pretty snooty, like kind of full of himself and talking about how art is a struggle. And if you're not struggling, it's not art, and that kind of thing. And I'm just like, come on, here we go again. What do you think? Like, do you think AI art is actually art, or could it be art? Let's say.
I think it definitely is art. I mean, you gotta love these people that try to define art and like pull all this no true Scotsman crap. I mean, to me, and I think we've talked a little bit about this before, the idea that just because AI works off of other imagery that it finds, and it's all kind of like derivative, effectively, like nobody can say that they or at least very few people in history can say that they kind of did their
like
the first concept with a particular type of art, like
all art is definitely derivative. I mean, you learn when you're young how to create art, whatever form it may be, by mimicking other stuff until you kind of develop your own style, and you might have influences from all over the place. And it's like it's all derivative. And actually most AI art, in fact, is not, like, some people have the notion that it's like, oh, it's just collaging pre-existing images together. Well, no, it's trained on pre-existing stuff. But it actually fully generates from scratch the design, utilizing algorithms essentially that are trained on existing things. It's sort of like basically it sat and watched a bunch of like art how-tos you know. And so it's like now it's following a process
Mhm.
to generate something fully from scratch. um so it's not necessarily just taking it can do like collages, like taking a bunch of pictures and putting them together or kind of reworking them. But it it's like, so I mean, art to me, it's like this dude that was talking about, oh, it's not real art and da 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 and the struggle. And it's like, it's not about the struggle. It's about expression. That's all it is. Art is expression. And, you know, even just simple things that seemingly, it's like, oh, you know, people say, oh, those art things you see where it's just like a square, you know, a red square with a huge white void behind it. That's not art. Or that toilet or whatever, you know, it's like, no, it's an expression. It's making a statement. It definitely can be art. Um, you know, it's like it just depends. It and well, like photography. That was the same argument when the camera was created. Like, oh, that taking a picture, photography, that's not art, you know, because all you're doing is pushing a button and taking a picture. Well, there's a lot more that goes into photography than just pushing that button. Like a lot. Now, also, a photograph can also not be art, like your family snapshots, right? That's not really art. You're just recording an event, right? That's not
Hmm.
necessarily art. It's not really expressive. It's just it's storing something, like,
Right.
you know,
Just like
making.
a police SketchUp, nobody would really consider that art.
Mm-hmm.
But well, it's kind of interesting how we draw lines between these things, right? Like
Yeah, like
that
commercial
right
art.
there should tell you there's really no box you can put art in because a police SketchUp artist, well, they even call it an artist actually, but
Mm-hmm.
like if they drew something just like that wasn't for work, you would
Mm-hmm.
call that art.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it could
but
be
when
like
it
a
comes
panel
to
in a comic book or something,
right,
and
yeah.
that's considered art.
Hmm.
And you know, maybe if it's like, it's obviously doing, it's performing a task like a police SketchUp or a court, you know, that kind of thing, like, but even stuff in court, like they're trying to capture like the feeling of the scene, and you'll see a lot of like expressive lines and things like that in like the court drawings and stuff. And so it's like, that's still kind of art. I mean, you know, it's maybe a little closer to like a family snapshot, but it's still kind of artistic in a sense. And you know, you also have to be very good at drawing to work that fast.
Oh yeah.
So I guess it could be kind of art, but
uh the thing I struggle with the AI art is that it there's a strangeness to it. It has this look of going for realism, but then for whatever reason it has trouble with like fingers. Like everybody looks like their parents were taking thalidomide when they were pregnant or something. You know, like,
well, and
uh
that's it, and it does, like by default, if you just type in your prompts and just let it go, you're gonna get like weird oddities like that. But this is where it becomes a form of art, in that you can go in and kind of tweak stuff to kind of develop the image more and more closer to what you want, like basically fix things like that. Because obviously the AI doesn't know what a hand is. It's like, you know,
right.
it's just kind of imagining stuff. It almost,
Well,
but yeah, like you said, there's a surrealness to it that's
that's
kind of
okay.
odd.
So that brings up a good question. Is AI the artist, or is the person putting in the prompts the artist? Because you're controlling the parameters. It's effectively your paintbrush. It's just a different
Yeah,
tool to create art with.
yeah, exactly. It is. I would, so the way I would describe it, it's kind of like, it's a team effort in essence. So like you're a sculptor, right? But maybe like you're injured and you still want to sculpt. So you're directing another person to sculpt for you.
Right.
And like, okay, well, you know, chip this thing or carve that thing or whatever. And like you're kind of looking at it and then directing that person. So it's sort of, you know, you're still the artist. Okay, let's electronic music. We both write electronic music.
Uh,
Now, some people argue that that's not real music because there's no physical instrument being played. But then it's like, well, is orchestral music music? You know, like somebody wrote music and they're not playing it, but they wrote music and then an
right.
orchestra is playing it, right? It's so the computer is basically your orchestra. So you're a
Mhm.
songwriter, and I guess that makes you a musician. And obviously, like what we do, sometimes we add our own like vocals or instrumental stuff
Yeah.
amongst that. But like ultimately, the computer is rendering that the synthesizers, you know, are generating the sound. But it's like a synthesizer is no different than a piano. You know, like you
Right.
push a key on a piano and it hits the strings and makes tones. You know, like, well, is the piano the musician or the
Yeah.
person pushing the keys? Like, how far back do you want to go? How granular do you want to get?
AI has been part of art for a long time. Like uh, with photography, for instance, after
Mm-hmm.
photography was accepted as art, then all of a sudden, like autofocus became a thing, right? And people are like, well, autofocus isn't real photography, but it's like, yeah, well, not everybody knows how to tweak everything exactly the same. And actually, most of the time, people saying autofocus isn't real also take shitty pictures that are all blurry.
Well,
So,
and that's the thing. It's like these things are helpful tools like white balance, or you know, there now there's AI image processing and that kind of thing to kind of clean things up,
yeah,
maybe
but I
balance
call
things
all of
out.
that
It's
AI.
basically
Like it
it,
all takes in the surrounding data and it makes a decision way faster than you could.
yeah.
And
And sometimes it isn't what you want. Like I sometimes, you
sure,
know, when taking pictures, turn off all the auto stuff because, like, you know, I'm trying to focus the scene in just the right way, and it keeps like, no, this is the thing to focus on, and it's like, no, I don't. I focus over there. Stop. I know there's a leaf right here, but that's not what I'm trying to focus on. You know,
yeah,
so sometimes those things you just turn off because you just have to do it manual and like white balance and stuff, it can like get confused, so sometimes you just have to do it manual. And so these things aren't perfect, and but it's like, you know, you could use or not use whatever things you want. And AI, for instance, like you could draw something, right?
mhm,
Maybe you draw an kind of a rough draft, right? You could plug that into your AI image generation and have it make like it basically realize an idea, right? And because you can actually run things fairly random, you could just keep generating and it'll just create like completely different variations of things, which might
mhm,
inspire you. You could be like, oh, this is, you could use it as a tool to take your sketch, create a like a full image, and then take that image and basically paint it or something in real life.
yeah,
um, like I mean, it's a tool. It's like, you know, it's Photoshop art. You know, it's like, well, it's basically just it's the same tools you would use in the real world, like paint brushes and pens and pencils and things like that. It's no different. Like
yeah,
it's just it's simply the medium of expression essentially.
yeah,
And sure, I think if you just like, you know how like on phones there's like AI art or like image changing. You could take your own picture and be like, I want to be a pirate, and it'll like put you in a pirate scene. Like I wouldn't call that art. That's more akin to like the family snapshot. It's just a little fun thing that you do. But
mm,
like when you're intentionally crafting, because I mean, when you're putting the prompts in, it's like telling a story. It's painting a picture with words, and it is not easy because you have to understand how the AI interprets what you're saying and what it's going to output. And a lot of times you get something and it's like, nah, it's not quite right, so you change a word here, change a word there. And I mean, there's like way more you could do than just that. But I mean, in its simplest form, basically you're, you know, it's kind of like you wrote a story essentially. So is telling a story, like, you know, most people consider it to be art, to like write a book. That's a form of art.
yeah,
And so in a way, that's kind of what you're doing here. Like,
mm,
oh, just because you're not using a quill pen and manually writing it on paper. You're using a typewriter. That's not art, like, well, or a computer, word processing, like it
Mm.
is art. That's the expression that makes it art.
Well,
That,
and going back to music, it's not just electronic music, but Autotune has become a thing, right?
yeah,
And whatever your opinions on Autotune are, it is still artistic. It's still an instrument. I mean, you still have somebody actually singing.
yep,
You're just altering the pitch in such a way that it sounds pleasing in a way that is not even humanly possible to achieve often.
yeah. Well, and that's
And
like when it's no different than like mastering something, like changing the volume and all the,
yeah, yeah. And
various,
that's art too.
yeah.
That's totally art.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
That's like
you can punch in presets and everything, but if maybe it sounds pretty good or whatever, but like if you really want to bring out like a bit of the bass or more of the vocals over here, these are tweaks that you're doing and your own interpretations that you're reflecting there. And
yeah,
it's totally art. Yeah, electronic or not,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, it really, like I said, it comes down to is it expression? The
Mm-hmm.
cave paintings and stuff, right? Where it's like very primitive, simple lines representing animals or whatever. And it's like, well, that's art. Even
Yeah.
the where they put hands and like sprayed stuff around the hands in that one cave or whatever, like, yeah, that's like, they decided where to put the hands and whose hands it was. And like, yeah, it's an expression. It's kind of like I was here, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. And it yeah, but people get caught up in the tool, right? And they have this notion that it's like easy, because in a way it is, like it can be easy,
It can
but
be. Yeah.
it can also be extremely challenging. Like I have worked messing with AI for a little bit, and like like what I put in versus what comes out is very different, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so I would have to sit there and spend a lot of time crafting and trying different things and changing things around, because it's like in my head I'm imagining what I want, and I'm not satisfied
Yeah.
with the very first thing that pops out of the AI's processing.
I mean, this is no different than commissioning a piece of art, right? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, you know what? I want it this way or that way. Like if you have something in mind and you're not actually doing it yourself, um, that is still art because somebody is doing it to your parameters,
Well,
right?
and that artist would have never created that piece of art if it were not for
Right.
your ideas, your input.
Yeah.
So that counts too.
Yeah. So even if you commission a piece of art, as long as you have some kind of like input
Mm-hmm.
into how it looks, you can totally claim like at least some artistic input on that.
Well, and that's kind of like photography, right? So
Yeah.
in like, sure, at the end of the day, the thing that captures the photograph is pushing the shutter release, right? That's where the photograph is like converted from like the scene to a picture. And but yet there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. Like, I mean, people who do landscape photography, they spend hours, like they'll hike way out somewhere and wait and wait and wait for just the right lighting, and get from just the right angle, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe have filters on the camera or get the right framing and stuff like that. And that that's art.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
yeah,
it's really
totally.
no different.
Yeah. Working with the available canvas and
Mm-hmm.
making something look as awesome as possible, like the colors, the shadows, all that stuff. Like I've been wanting for a long time to get like a really good camera and be able to actually kind of take some good photos and stuff. Yeah, because yeah, like that there's I don't know, like something, even if only you ever look at that, right? Like it's still some, like well, I mean, our music, only we listen to it, like
Yeah.
nobody else listens to
Yeah. Hardly
it.
anybody. Yeah.
But we still write it, right? For
Yeah.
like well over 2 decades, we've
Yep.
been making music constantly because we enjoy it,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, music is kind of therapeutic.
Mhm,
And you can kind of like get your emotions out sometimes or
mhm,
express
mhm.
something like so many of my songs have been like related to breakups or
Oh
things
yeah.
like that or loneliness or whatever, especially
This
way back in the day,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah. This
know.
is a good diatribe moment. Like if you have any kind of artistic talent whatsoever that you're proud of, just do the shit out of it. Like
Yeah.
if you paint, but not that great that I can't make money off it. Fuck that shit. Just do it. If you have like some expression that you want to get out and then you're proud of it, you put it in your house and you look at it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
nobody else has
exactly.
to look at it, but like if they
It,
do and they like it, bonus points, right?
exactly. Well, and it's also there's something in the process of like capturing those feelings in say like a picture or a song or something that really it helps a lot.
Yeah. And the
You know
best
it.
part is to be able to tell the story. If
Mhm.
somebody's listening to your song or looking at your painting and you're like, this is what I was feeling at the time, and like there's something you can really share there that goes a step beyond the art itself.
Oh, there's a
Uh,
great scene in a movie called Immortal Beloved, basically about that. Like, you
hmm,
have no idea what this song is about, and like he proceeds to tell the story, and it's like wow, and that this is kind of like classical music, so there's no vocals in it, but it's like
uh-huh.
you can hear the story. Like it's kind of amazing how just with sound alone, just music, um, you can capture so much. Like even just kind of like a general sense of something. Uh,
Hmm.
it's so good. And actually, going back to something from a recent Lightning Strikes Twice, like Star Trek Two: The Wrath of Khan, is generally considered even by non-Trekkie people to be one of the greatest films ever made, like a master class in
Oh
filmmaking.
yeah.
And James Horner's music, like he had a theme for Khan and a theme for Kirk, essentially. And whoever was kind of getting the upper hand, that theme would kind of come into play, and it would kind of
Huh.
alter itself as it. But you don't notice it when you watch the movie. But it's
Mm-hmm.
so powerful because I mean, the scene where they're kind of hunting each other, like, ooh, it's so tense. And you know that's an interesting thing too. Like so many movies that they got to be all grandiose and explosions and all kinds of crazy fight scenes and battle scenes. And oh my god, like Star Trek Today is kind of like that. Like it's just like oh, huge space battles and lasers and but that one scene where they're in the nebula, like trying to figure out where the other is and hide and like it's so tense. It's like an edge
Hmm.
of your seat thing where you're like, oh my god. And even now, I've seen it hundreds of times, and I still it gets me going. I get pumped.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The great thing about music and movies, right? Like it's something that so much effort goes into, so
Mm-hmm.
much art and so much thought, yet even to audiophiles like you or I, like it still becomes like, I don't know, background noise sounds a little bit like minimalized, but I mean that is kind of what happens, right? You're paying attention to the story or whatever, but it's still, in fact, it's better if it is more background noise and
Yep.
isn't in the foreground because it's setting like the subconscious part of the story for you,
Yep. Exactly.
like the mood and the emotion. Most of that comes from music,
Mm-hmm.
um, music or laughter. Like this is why they put laugh tracks in shit shows like Friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like because like that makes you think it's funny.
Yeah.
It gives you the illusion that you're being entertained and having a jovial good time.
Well, and I guess it's sort of like it's like a seasoning, right? Music is kind of like that. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like the movie might be very bland if it weren't for the music. And of course, you could tell again, like going back to this idea of how you can tell a story with just music alone. Um, that that blends really well with cinematography, like visual stuff combines
Mm-hmm.
really well with music. And if it's done right, it can be fantastic. Like one of my favorite movies, Blade Runner, does that extremely well. The atmosphere, like there's a visual atmosphere, but there's also an auditory atmosphere in this like kind of haunting synth music that
Yeah.
Vangelis did. Like what a soundtrack. I mean,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it's so good. And it really like the movie wouldn't be the same without that soundtrack.
Or
Um,
or Danny Elfman.
oh yeah, yeah,
Like
you're right. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Danny Elfman's like top tier in
Mm-hmm.
like movies. Well, and Oingo Boingo, of course, right? But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as far as like movie scores go, like he had Batman and Edward
Mm-hmm.
Scissorhands, I think, and
Yeah.
um,
What's his name? Shuki Levy, the guy who did like basically all of the theme songs for all the '80s cartoons.
oh wow,
Like if you look at his
yeah,
lineup of songs, or his production throughout that time period, it's like basically every cartoon we watched as kids, he wrote the soundtrack for.
oh wow,
And like, but that's the thing, that intro is what gets you ready to watch, right? When
yeah.
see the He-Man, right? You watch He-Man
Oh,
and like,
He-Man still gives me goosebumps, man.
yeah.
Like that theme song is fucking brilliant.
And actually so is She-Ra too. I've gotten
Yeah,
into watching She-Ra, and that's actually a almost I feel like it's almost a better show than He-Man. But
the
that
new one or like
no,
original,
like the classic
the
He-Man and
original. Yeah,
She-Ra, like
I
kind of,
watched it all the time as a kid. Yeah,
yeah. But that like like when and and that thing with the sparkles coming down, and it's like doing this little and
yeah.
then it's like She-Ra and stuff. It's like, man, you get like pumped, you know? Like,
Hmm.
damn. And even things like Gummy Bears too. Remember that cartoon?
Oh yeah,
That theme
yeah,
song just kind of like oozes adventure and like I don't know. Like but that's the prelude to the show. And so it's like those theme songs are really important,
hmm
and it ties it all together.
yeah. Oh, and what about the that song Trinity that opens
It's on the tip of my tongue.
what
Is
was
it
that show?
Kitchen Spoon something?
No, no, it was Kitchen Basin. Uh,
Uh, um, um,
did say
Microbes or something?
kitchen sink telescopes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that like that's actually kind of it really fits what we do, honestly.
mhm. Yeah,
So I mean, and this is
and
again, well,
and every season we have like a slightly different version of it.
mhm.
Actually, I just wrote the one for season 6. I haven't uploaded it yet though, but it's pretty cool. I think it
Nice.
was. Yeah,
Season 6. That's gonna be
little teaser for everybody. Half a season from now.
yeah, yeah. Well, and this is where AI could really come in handy too, like in assisting tying music into video or something. Like yeah, I know we talk a lot about AI on the show, but I think it's to me
So much I made a
AI.
playlist for AI
Yeah, yeah. Well,
episodes.
to me, so you know, AI will be what the internet is now.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it is basically the next leap forward technologically. And I don't
yeah.
think anybody realizes it. And a lot of people are scared of it.
Oh, people do. Yeah, people do.
And
Yeah,
I mean, not
because
enough
like
people recognize it though.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like the same thing happened with the .com thing,
Yeah.
and the information
Oh
superhighway.
yeah, yeah.
Like some.
Like remember the shows in the '90s that were like, oh, this thing called the internet. like, and they would talk about it like it was just a mystery, like, and now everybody uses it. It's just ubiquitous now. It's like, in fact,
Expedia.com.
yeah, exactly. AOL CDs and floppies. Oh man,
Hmm.
actually, so when I worked at mailboxes, etc., that is now the UPS store. There were, like, because we basically, there were it was kind of like a post office box kind of system. So you'd rent
Right.
a little box and you could receive packages or letters, and we'd put them in the things. Well, that was the time when AOL was sending out CDs to everybody, 900 free hours or whatever, and nobody wanted them, so they'd be chucking them all the time. Well, this one time there were so many in the bin that, like, me and a friend, we just, like, after closing, we just took them all out of the packages and threw them like frisbees and shattered them all over the place. Like, somebody
I
actually
think
made a sculpture out of AOL CDs.
I think they were in the newspaper too when I had that paper out and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they would just like constantly be sliding out of the Sunday paper with all
Yep.
the other fucking advertisements.
Oh God. Yeah, the
Oh,
Sunday paper, man.
oh God. Blackstrap Sunday. Yeah. Anyway.
Jesus. Oh, that would be a good thing to have last Sunday in here. I think it's been a while since we've had that, so
Oh
maybe.
yeah. That was probably season one.
I
Yeah.
think so. I'm gonna make a note of that. So, but yeah, get, like, AI can do so much. Like, the potential to help humanity is so vast and incalculable. Like, it, it's going to change the world, and I think for the better. And when it comes to art, I think allow it'll allow people to express themselves, even people with limited, like, physical skills. Well, okay, so think about this. Imagine somebody like Stephen Hawking can't move around, just uses a computer to talk, right?
uh,
Well, shouldn't he have access to the ability to express himself visually? You know, like,
Dale Chihuly, the famous glass blower guy
mm,
from Tacoma, actually. Um, Lost his eye in a car accident or
I
something.
think it might have been during glass blowing, in fact, like a
I,
shard of hot glass or something.
I feel like that's one of those things where you would expect that was it, but it was actually something else. But anyway,
Yeah.
however, he lost his eye. It got
Mhm.
it like he just basically tells people what to do with the glass now.
Yep.
But he's still considered, like, he just slaps his name on it and it sells for like $7,000 or
Oh
more.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and what he does too, he typically has these, like, bottles of paint, and he'll squirt paint patterns and stuff and create kind of the general sense of the thing for people to create for him. And
Hmm.
that is kind of like how AI works.
Yeah.
You give it kind of a framework, and then it molds it into whatever it thinks you're looking for. And then
Hmm.
you're like, maybe, or maybe you never know. Sometimes it's hole in one, right? It's like, that's the perfect thing. Just the first iteration is perfect.
Or sometimes you come up with something in the course of the creation that was nothing like what you intended, but is still awesome.
Or
Like,
maybe it's closer to what you like, what would express what you're trying to express.
mhm. like
That's a possibility. Or
I've
it does
had
it more
plenty of
effectively.
songs like that where I
Mm-hmm.
set out to do like a particular thing, or um, maybe I was trying to like write a cover song, and just from by ear or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, not knowing what notes or where what the cadence was or whatever, and like some other riff came out of that, and you
Yeah.
move a few notes around here and there, and like this happens all the time, and it doesn't
Oh
mean
yeah.
it's not art. Like,
No, because then maybe that becomes like the foundation upon which you build a really cool song that you're still expressing.
yeah.
You know that yeah, I've had that happen quite often.
Hmm.
It's really funny. So like, because there's kind of a literalness to the way AI art can function. Because I thought so. I was the very first image once I got the server up and running and connected to it. Um, I thought, well, I'll just do like a test image, and I'll do a cat thing for a girlfriend who loves cats, right? So I was like, well, how about a cat in a spacesuit? So I kind of put the prompts in like a cat in a spacesuit with like a rocket behind it on the surface of the moon, da 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 da. And what I got was basically a spacesuit and like a kind of a lunar looking landscape. But it's like, oh well, okay, it's in a spacesuit. How would you know that you can't tell that it's a cat because it's in a spacesuit? So it's like it took it literally.
Oh
You know,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
now
you got
you
to be
can
like the space shoot suit should have cat ears or something. Like
yeah, or maybe no, you can exclude items. So I could like take the have no helmet. So it's like there's obviously there'd be a cat head, or you can emphasize certain things. Like I can add pluses to say like the cat to make the cat more like the thing that it focuses on basically when it's generating this stuff.
come on, Davy boy, take your space helmet off.
Yeah. Well, and then I thought, well, is the AI thing thinking, well, since I said like the surface of the moon, on the surface of the moon, well, you'd have to keep your spacesuit on. You can't just take your helmet off. So it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's a cat in there. I can't tell because it's a freaking spacesuit.
Yeah.
It's hilarious though. But it's also really interesting too because you can see, like, at least with the system I have set up, you can watch its sort of thought process as like things are being kind of molded and put together. It starts off really pixelated and lots of different colors, and then the image slowly kind of blurrily comes into view, and you can kind of see it's like changing elements and stuff to kind of fit. Like it's super interesting.
Yeah, I there's somebody I've been wanting to have on as a guest for a while now. A super great musician, but he also dabbles with like AI stuff. And uh, I recently just remembered like a few years ago, he was asking me if I wanted to kind of collaborate with him on a AI project for biological applications.
Hmm.
And I had been having this idea at that time about how AI could actually kind of help with uh, creating kind of like think magic school bus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you shrink down and like go inside the body or whatever,
Yeah.
like to use AI to create kind of an image based off of like, what it's detecting around it. You could use some like old school tech like sonar or something to like
Mm-hmm.
figure out what's where and how far away and create a 3D image of it or something.
Even
And
thermal imaging could be added.
yeah, all of that stuff, like Jordy's visor, basically,
Mm-hmm.
like a composite of all of these inputs and stuff, and create like a total visual image. Shit, you could even like VR the hell out of it and be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, something like that would be like life altering,
Oh yeah.
to
So like a
rely
probe.
on AI for medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, AI is already making huge strides in medicine,
Hmm.
being able to analyze way more data than humans can,
Hmm.
and things like that. And it's kind of we're basically in like the dark ages right now. I mean, it's a very very beginning. I guess the Stone Age, I should say, not the Dark Ages. Um, yeah, we're barely starting with AI, but it has so much potential for so many things. People use it in engineering to develop better systems because it can run through like billions of iterations of different concepts until it arrives at the thing that works the best, essentially.
Yeah.
Like car suspensions, even I saw like AI design a car suspension for like race cars or something. It looks so weird, like it's all twisty and strange, but it's like, oh, this is actually a way better suspension than any other suspension that we've ever made. You
Huh.
know, it just figured it out because it's able to go through so many different things and analyze so many data points all at once. Like this is world changing, honestly.
Yeah, this is the technology that we should have had decades ago.
Yeah.
Because like it will save so much time. It will sharpen hypotheses. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can basically like ask AI how plausible a hypothesis is before you even sink money into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
it like just shit like that is super efficient.
Well,
Uh,
it could also be used in like forensics and crime fighting and
mhm.
counterfeit prevention. Like it could
As long
differentiate.
as you treat it like a tool and
Yeah.
not like a end all be all,
Yeah,
like
exactly. It's
at
an
least
assistant.
now, you know.
Yeah, it's an assistant. Well, actually, going back to Star Trek again, you remember that episode of TNG when they went down to some planet that was like the perfect world or whatever, where you know kids were when they were young, they were analyzed. And this like grand computer system, right, would
Hmm.
like help would tell
Tell
you,
them
oh,
what they would
you're
be or
going to
whatever.
be a musician,
Yeah.
and then there was like a musical instrument that like it was kind of like, well, how do you use that? Well, you just think the music into existence. Or that carving thing that that kid was using that carved something out of wood and it just looked like it was just bzzz, like a laser. And but it's like, so what if it's easy, right? Art is
Right.
about expression. And
Yeah.
probably I would venture to guess that that musical instrument or that little laser cutting tool isn't something that you can just instantly use, just like AI art generation systems. It's like it takes a lot of effort to learn how to work with it and learn how it works, you know? And every time you make something new, it's an exercise in exploration and experimentation. That you know, like, okay, if you're only doing I don't know, you know, pictures of robots or something like that, well, okay, you can get familiar with it and kind of make lots of pictures of robots in all kinds of configurations. But then as soon as you go to like landscape stuff, well, now it's all different. It's a whole new ball game essentially, and you have
Yeah.
to learn more techniques to that.
Yeah. I mean, if if we get to a point in society where we kind of collectively accept that AI can create art, I think we'll begin to advance rapidly
Mm-hmm.
in more practical measures like science and
Yeah.
engineering and things like that. Because uh, there's an element of not taking it as seriously as we should, I think.
Yeah.
And when you validate something as an artist, it it sort of lends more credibility to its facets as a more like practical, mathematical, precise tool
Mm-hmm.
as well. Because how much more precise can you get than an artist using whatever media to create exactly what they're trying to express? You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Where you can adjust every minute detail down to
yeah,
the like the atom essentially.
right. Like if you, I mean, there's a saying like such and such is an art as
Mm-hmm.
much as it is a science, you know? And that's true because like even in science, like you have to have a certain finesse with the tool you're using in order to get it to do exactly what you need it to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
exactly.
doesn't invalidate the data in any way whatsoever.
No, no.
Yeah,
Well, and one
it's just
thing,
art. Art
well,
and
yeah, and
science working
one
together.
thing that you brought up earlier about saving time, like, you know, I think it's perfectly valid to utilize AI. I mean, well, you mean AI art generation takes a long time to understand and build your skills with. But once you're skilled, it's like, okay, I can craft a set of prompts, start it going, and go to work, right? am I expected to sit here in front of a canvas and spend days painting this thing, over and over again? Like, no. I mean, why can't we have that? You just have an idea for something like, oh man, I want that. This is perfect for my expression, the thing that I want to imagine. And you can let it go and then go do other things. Like it could free up a lot of time. And,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's just the art side of things, just the, I guess, play. But then again, play is also valid as, part of the human condition, right?
Mhm.
Uh, if we don't have fun, then life is drudgery, and that's not good. But
Mhm.
there's so many other things that AI stuff can do. These systems can do so much to free up time. Like, I mean, in science, right? Research and stuff. What if you set an AI assistant to the task of researching something and collecting a few data points for you, some information, and then you go and do the hands-on stuff you need to do so you can free up the time to be able to do more, right? Like
Mhm.
it could do that. And then you come back and it's like, oh, here's all the things that it found for me. And well, Star Trek, they use the ship's computer to do that all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And this it's seemingly ubiquitous to
Yeah.
that.
I mean, going back to the camera, like people have used AI without even thinking about it, like the autofocus and whatnot.
Yeah.
Things like that just any kind of any kind of automation that we rely on, if
Mm-hmm.
you think about it, is technically artificial intelligence. It
Yeah.
may only be smart about one thing, but it is smart about that.
Yep.
And that is artificial. It's programmed to take in a certain amount of its environment and analyze it in such a way and and tweak the parameters of whatever it's tweaking
Mm-hmm.
exactly so that it is just what you need for that moment.
Yeah.
and and we don't invalidate any of that any longer as being an art or a valid tool for science or anything like that. We
Mm-hmm.
just it's we take it for granted almost.
Yeah. Well, imagine in science or something. Well, okay, let's say the same argument, like, oh, it's not art if you're using automation, right? Um,
Mhm.
well, okay, then all you mathematicians out there, then you ought to be using pen and paper, maybe a slide rule and an abacus. No calculators, no scientific calculators, no computers. Nope. You got to sit there and write it out with a pencil on paper. You know, and
Yeah.
like, what? Why? We have the tools. Use a freaking calculator. You know,
Hmm.
like it. Why should I have to sit here? Like I have expressions I'd like to express, like things and concepts that I would like to image, but I don't know how. I'm very bad at drawing people or animals. Like those are very difficult for me.
Did you just say aminals?
No, I
Have
said
you had some have you had some beer?
animals. Oh,
I've
I
had
think
some
it's the
beer.
3D printer running in the background there. Um, like I'm not very good at that, and I could draw like geometry and machines fairly well.
Hmm.
But maybe I want something to be in a slightly different style that
Yeah.
that I'm not familiar with, and maybe that is the best form for expression. And so, what should I just not draw that because I don't, AI can allow me to do that. Like I can
Yeah.
take my design that I drew and say, okay, take this design and then add a dog into the scene or something like that. Or
Yeah.
or I'll draw like a stick figure. Okay, that stick figure, make that into an actual person, you know.
Yeah.
It can actually do that, by the way.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, going back to whether or not AI is art, I mean, it really is just the tool, the
Mm-hmm.
paintbrush, the camera, the artificial intelligence. It's whatever it is. I mean, I think at this point, like uh AI created songs are
Hmm.
mostly fakes, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason why eventually it couldn't actually create songs
Hmm.
in certain styles that you input, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like it's interesting that like all these people, myself included, thought that these AI written songs were real.
Hmm.
Um, because like it is kind of believable that
Hmm.
even at this stage in our sophistication with artificial intelligence, you would expect that maybe it can create something as sophisticated and emotional as a completely individualistic, unique piece of music.
Well, and AI models are trained from existing human creations, just as other humans are.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who play a guitar, they don't start off with their own music. They typically start off learning to play someone else's song, and that's how they develop their technique. And a lot of times people will emulate someone else's style.
Oh yeah,
And does that make it not art because
probably
it's
all
derivative?
the time. I would argue.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Everybody has an influence.
Yeah, pretty much.
You
And
know,
maybe you strive to be like somebody, their
right?
style, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to kind of like craft something without like, okay, we like for instance, I think I sent you the comic book version of the photo of
Yeah.
us. And like it's really interesting how it changed the positioning and facial expressions of us.
Hmm.
Because I added in like what we do, like, oh, this the one on the left, is the guitar guy and keyboards and drums and da da da. And so and like, yeah, I mean, it's a whole new picture.
Huh. Wait, that was us?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. It was just a like a test essentially. I was like, oh, trying to do it in comic book style, like hand
Huh.
drawn.
I thought there was like a knight and an alien or something, um, which probably isn't far from the truth
Yeah,
of
it was mostly like
reality.
kind of blue looking. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure I emailed that to you, but it's really cool. It's like, you could use photography, your photographic skills, to capture a scene and then input it into an AI system to turn it into something that's different.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, I totally consider that to be art.
Sure. Well, even
Whether or not it's just as simple as telling AI what to do, or
Mhm.
you know telling an artist what you want them to paint, it's still art.
Well, and even selecting the layout of something, right? Like people who cut pictures out of magazines and glue them all, collaging and stuff. That's art,
Oh yeah.
you know? Like you can create an expressive image that way as well. What you choose to put into that picture, that final product, is your choice.
Yeah.
And that still makes it art, really, just as the like the red square and the white background painting or whatever, that kind of thing. It's like even that the emptiness and simplicity of it is expression in and of itself, and that still makes it art.
Yeah. Or just like a female aardvark sitting on a table,
Oh, now
or
I'm gonna
a
have to
banana. Sorry.
now I'll put that in and see what the AI generates. Actually, now I'm really curious.
So I Alexa is
Mhm.
somewhat of an AI, right?
Yeah, well, I
Um,
think now more than before. Yeah.
yeah, and at one point I had like one of the cheapo versions of Alexa, and I was listening to some music, and I forget what I said. I was like, turn the volume up to like 15, and she was like, the highest I can go is 10. And then I was all like a smart ass, and I was like, turn this one up to 11. And then all of a sudden it just started blaring like super loud.
That's
It
funny.
totally like took a Spinal Tap inside joke
Mhm.
and actually responded. Like,
In like an appropriate way.
yeah,
That's funny.
like that. That was pretty impressive.
Mhm.
Just the little Easter eggs you can find in there.
Yep. Well, I see AI. So one of my favorite TV shows is a little known British show called Star Cops. Um, Basically, it's kind of like a murder mystery sort of show, and they're kind of a sort of police department on like the moon bases and stuff. Really good show, but the main character has a thing he calls Box, which is a little handheld computer thing that he can talk to, and it can like give answers essentially, kind of like Alexa, but it's
huh.
also like remembers his patterns and stuff and gets snarky too. It's like I could see AI being used in that capacity as well, like just having like a personal companion assistant basically that knows you, because like
Yeah.
Alexa doesn't know you. These kind of, they're not really, they're very generic in their application of
Mm-hmm.
what they do. Like, oh, it's just they apply the same rules to everybody. Where I'd like to see AI get to know you and be able to fit like what you need more appropriately.
Every car should have Kit from Knight Rider.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh man, that'd be
Aren't you
awesome.
going a little fast, Michael?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think we've delved into this topic pretty well,
Yeah.
hour or so, so that'll be
Yeah,
good.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that people really should try to give some consideration to. Like,
Mhm.
um, I mean, you could even have museums of AI art,
Yeah.
and it. I mean, how cool would this experience be, right? Like, you could pay money to go to this AI art museum, right, and walk in and buy your ticket and be like, what would you like to see? And you'd be like, well, yeah, I'd like to see some paintings of fruit and some sculptures like Michelangelo would have made and blah, blah, blah. And then you walk through and all that shit is there,
Yeah.
right? Like exactly what you want to see.
That would be cool.
Um,
Like almost a holodeck of sorts.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, that's a great point. Like holodeck and AI, like
Hmm.
that's kind of the next step, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think a holodeck could work without AI.
Right, right. Um,
Because I mean, if
I,
you look, the prompts that they give in like Star Trek Next Generation are really basic,
oh yeah,
but you get the sense because people have their own holodeck programs, and you get the sense that it is kind of like current day AI, where you kind of have to tweak and craft very carefully to get just what you want, and and that's interesting. Like
mm-hmm.
that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to look into it with an open mind.
Yeah,
Go explore AI image generation stuff and give it a try, and you'll see.
yeah, and don't be afraid of AI or all this data collection stuff because a lot of it is just so innocuous and uh, harmless, really. Like all of it is just basically trying to improve the user experience.
Yeah.
Um, whether they're trying to like give you better advertisements for Lucky Charms or something, or whatever. Like it, it's nothing really to fear.
Not on its
Um,
own, it's a tool.
like Yeah,
And I would,
artificial intelligence itself is not capable of having the emotions that are involved with lust for power.
mhm.
You know, it's not going to decide that humanity is like a stain and should be eradicated. You know, it doesn't have those kind of leaps and bounds of ethical decision making and stuff.
Well,
And I think they kind of write in like fail safes against that anyway, just in case.
yeah, yeah. I mean, granted, AI could be weaponized. So in the
Mhm.
wrong hands, it could certainly be used to do harm.
I'm sure it probably already has.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can bet that most major militaries around the world are using it right now
Hmm. Hmm.
and planning future things
Oh
for
yeah.
warfare using AI. And you know, I'm not cool with
Well,
that, but it's the same thing as guns or aircraft or whatever. It's like they can be used for good
yeah.
and they can be used for bad.
I mean that's a great point. Like when it comes to 2A,
Hmm.
uh, what if there's an AI weapon that exploits your greatest fear and cripples you so
Mm.
that you can be taken advantage of by whoever wields the AI that does so, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
is that a weapon that should be uh, regulated?
Well, I would hope that that wouldn't like. My hope is that this sort of frontier brings us into a world where we don't need warfare. That is no longer a component of civilization, human
That would be
society.
nice.
Yeah, like an AI may not necessarily do that, but I mean, if we could achieve that, cross that threshold, essentially, then we would pretty much be using it for mostly good. And you're never going to get, eliminate all the bad
Yeah.
people that are doing bad things. But like, I'd rather a few bad things happen occasionally than gigantic bad things happen where, you know, thousands of people die as a result of something.
We should do another episode where we interview Chat GPT,
Yeah.
because it would be interesting to ask its opinion, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
about if there's a way to eradicate war,
Ooh,
to make it obsolete, to
that's a good. Yeah.
remove any and all incentive for like having power over everybody else.
Or to like do harm to others for gain, for personal
Yeah,
gain.
yeah. And I mean, like, let's say like a portion of war is power based and a portion of war is religion based. I
Mm.
don't know that AI can fix the latter,
No.
but um, the lust for power could maybe, optimistically speaking, possibly be eradicated by AI.
Well, I would say it's more control in that aspect, not necessarily power, because power is not really a thing that a person can
Splitting
have.
hairs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important. It's an important distinction to make,
Yeah,
but also there's resources. There's borders that people have conflicts over,
yeah, yeah,
territories, basically, like that. Those are sources for warfare. But yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that next time.
yeah.
So stay tuned. But for now, I think we've gone far enough. I think in this particular topic. But I'd like to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts down there in the comment section. What do you think about AI and pros, cons, that kind of thing? Your experiences, whatever.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts.
Hey, AI, are there any comments down there? Hello, hello, hello.